Fuck this question, I'm not doing it. Hey guys, today I'm doing a Q&A using some questions that have been submitted through Instagram. So thank you everyone who submitted. I'm going to try and get through as many as I can. Had some really cool questions, so thank you for that. First off, talk about your career. I'm not a photographer by profession. I'm actually an art director. So what that means is I work with photographers, I work with videographers, I work with stylists, makeup artists, designers, lots of different types of creatives, and I might be working on a shoot for a client, working on a video, or it could be more design focused with graphic designers, and I kind of develop what that looks like through mood boards, through working with different people, hiring the right talent, and then it all comes together, and that's basically what my job is. What is your favorite thing about your career? Probably working with lots of different people. It's been something that's allowed me to meet some of my favorite photographers, work with them, see how they work, see how they create the work that I see and love. And yeah, I've been able to make really good connections with those types of people. So I think that's probably one of my favorite things about my career so far, is the different people that I've been able to meet through that. Who are your favorite photographers and why? Great question. I think one of my favorite modern photographers has to be Dean Martindale. I had the great opportunity of working with him on a campaign once, and not only are his images incredible, the style he has for it, the way he works is so great. Watching someone like that work, I'm not sure it's something I could ever do. He has a way about interacting that's just incredible. I just love his work and I just love the results he gets. Also, Rhys Frampton, big fan of his work. Never had the opportunity to meet him before, but I've seen some, if you follow him on Instagram, you see some like behind the scenes videos on his stories, stuff like that. It's just incredible watching someone shoot off like a roll of film so quickly and then pick up another Pentax 6.7, pick up an RZ. Like, he has this whole kit going and he'll just like rattle off reel after reel. It's just like incredible. I can't imagine ever doing that myself. He's someone that shoots campaigns, projects completely on film. The quality of his work is just outstanding. It's like, I just love the way some of his images look. They're incredible. So Rhys Frampton, check him out. Another favorite, Vicky Grout. She's created an amazing body of work focused around portraiture and specifically different types of music like grime and hip hop, and the culture of those genres kind of like shines through in a lot of her work. And I just think, yeah, she's amazing. Check her out. And also my friends, Apricot Berlin, again, met them through a campaign we worked on, and they just have a great look. They do a lot of film work, they do some digital as well for campaigns, but they kind of marry the two together. A pair of photographers that work together under the same name. And having seen them at work, I just think it's great. They work together and they'll often shoot at the same time. And I think it's great for like getting more sort of like candid or reportage kind of like shots, because you sometimes get some really cool, different alternate angles that you wouldn't normally get if it's just one person shooting. So those guys are great. Check that pair of potatoes out. When and how did you guys start shooting film photography? Originally, I started shooting around 10 or 12 years ago. That was when I was doing a lot of, for university, I was doing like art at university and at school. I was doing a lot of photography and sort of experimenting, but I never really had any sort of like training around it. It was more trying stuff out. We used to do darkroom stuff at university. Again, I don't remember any of that information now, but at the time it was cool to experiment, and it was, really eye-opening. And then I kind of drifted away from that, got into design. And then I always thought film was something that I couldn't do, or was a bit too hard, or, I didn't understand the technicalities enough to kind of try it. But then I picked up an RZ probably about 5 years ago, started playing around with that. I was achieving the sort of looks that I wanted to achieve for a long time and that I kind of really admired from other photographers. So when I discovered medium format, that was how I realized how to create those sort of looks. What's your favorite photo you've taken and why? I think probably one of the shots I took of Kate in episode 2, I think. I just really loved that look that I got, and I've since tried to sort of like do a similar thing, and I've actually found it quite hard to get the same feel that I got in that image. So yeah, I just really love that image. Also, a photo I took of Amber Driscoll. This was just like the perfect natural light setup. I just think the way the light hits her and the sort of depth of that image is just something that I've always really liked, and she's also just a great model. But I would also have to say, I think one of my favourite shots is probably this photo. It sounds silly, but this photo of a cone that I took in Japan. It just kind of stood out to me, and it's not something I normally photograph, but I really like the sort of shape and composition. The image just reminds me of Japan as well, and I just find it such a fascinating place. I really enjoyed that trip. Any plans for Radical Eye magazine? Before the channel existed in this format, one of the things I always wanted to do was to create a magazine, and that's kind of why it has the name Radical Eye Magazine. That was always the intention, and originally I was planning working with Tom to sort of like make something that was based around film photography, that was about, you know, culture, music in London, things that we thought were cool and we wanted to talk about. But yeah, creating a physical magazine is something that I'm definitely very keen to revisit in the future when the time is right. Who would be your dream person to take a portrait of? Wow. I'd have to say probably Tom York from Radiohead. I just think he's someone that has done so much amazing work so far in his career and his life. And he doesn't seem to be like slowing down or losing his edge at all. He's still creating amazing stuff and looks like he'll continue to do it for the rest of his life. I love the idea of being able to photograph people earlier on in their careers. Obviously, Tom York isn't, but I love the idea of some of the people that I get to meet and photograph. I love the idea that, you know, 10, 20, 30 years from the time I take the photo, they could be like a Tom York type person of the future, you know, like just a legend. That's something that drives me and kind of like really excites me to take photos of people. I just find that very exciting that I could be photographing someone that goes on to do incredible things. Shout out Tom. Tom, if you're watching, drop a comment. Is it too difficult to get into the photography field in London? I don't work as a photographer, so I can't firsthand tell you. There's a lot of creative people here. There's a lot of photographers here. So if you're coming to London to get into the industry, you're up against the best in the world. I wouldn't recommend necessarily arriving in London and expecting to sort of be able to jump straight into work if you're coming to do photography work. You know, you're going to need to have a solid portfolio because there's just going to be so many other people out there doing the same thing. So yeah, it's probably a tricky place to get into, but as I said, I don't have first-hand experience of it. Tips to get exposure / start opening up new opportunities within photography. It sounds really silly, but the best thing you can do is to just keep shooting. I think it's really easy to sort of shoot, become a little bit complacent, and then, you know, try and sell yourself too much to people. I think it's really important to just keep developing, and hopefully those things will sort of come to you. Keep working, keep doing stuff, do stuff for free within reason. Don't do too much for free. Make connections, network. Networking is so important. Making the right contacts, finding people that do cool things, starting conversations with those people while also pushing your work and keep trying to strive for improvements. That's the best thing you can do. And then that exposure and the opportunities are just going to come. Any tips on growing on social media? My tip would be to not worry about growing on social media. I think there's too much focus nowadays on getting big on social media, and that might seem hypocritical from someone who has a YouTube channel, but I also think, and I'm also very self-aware that sometimes making these videos might distract me from making better images. So something I'm always trying to do is focus on the actual image, and if there's an opportunity to make something along the way for YouTube, then that's what I'm going to do. I think it's really important to just focus on the actual photographs you're taking or whatever it is you're doing creatively, and social media will come second. And I think it's important to remember that, you know, most of my favorite photographers that I follow on Instagram, some of them have got like a couple of thousand followers. They're not big on Instagram, but they are great photographers. They work, they have great clients, and that's what's important, you know, that they're doing cool stuff and they're not bothered around social media. They barely even use it, you know. yeah, don't worry so much about social media, and instead just focus on making that good stuff. If you make the good work, people are going to want to look at it. Which film lab do you use? I use a lab in East London, Analog Films Limited. The value you get there, the price versus the quality is great. I really like the guys there. I always message them on Instagram just to like, you know, if I've got a question rather than having to like call them all the time. And they always get back to me straight away, which is really cool. How do you archive/organize your NEGS? Good question from Barney. Here's one I made earlier. Hopefully you can see this. So I basically got a series of, folders that go on the shelf. This one is a 120 folder. So if I open this up, I've got, can you see it? I've got different NEGs here. Yeah, and then I sort of label them at the bottom, different people I've shot with or different occasions, whatever it might be. So that's how I organize them. At the moment, I need to update this. I've got negatives all over the place. How do you edit your color films? I edit my color films through Photoshop mainly. I actually just have sort of like a folder of adjustment layers that I kind of drag onto each image, and then I make little adjustments depending on, you know, each image is a little bit different. Maybe some of them are skewed color wise a little bit too much. There's not really a process that I go through for each thing. It's more, I kind of have a set thing that I do, and that is kind of part of why my images look a specific way compared to someone else's. Do you listen to music while editing? If so, what you into? I kind of listen to a lot of like electronic stuff that's got interesting production or textures. There's a guy called Lapalux. He's got an album called Lustmore, I think. That's one of my favorite things to listen to when I'm doing sort of editing type work. There's a band called The Invisible who have got an album called Risper, I think, which is again one of my favorite albums. There's so many textures and interesting things going on in those albums. I also love an album by a band called The Joy Formidable, which is called The Big Raw. I think that's something I always listen to, the album. I love it. It's probably one of my favorite albums. But yeah, I listen to stuff like Tame Impala. Radiohead's always been like a classic band since I was a kid that I've always been into. Thoughts on modified instant film backs for medium format cameras? I'm actually really interested in this right now. I recently saw a product which I'm trying to get hold of for a future shoot, so stay tuned for that. Hopefully, I'm just trying to track one down. Yeah, I'm really interested in doing that. I've never done it before, so hopefully soon. Which camera is cheap right now that you expect to go up in price? Yeah, good question. I'm not really in the market for any cameras at the moment, so I'm not sort of up to date on prices. One thing I have noticed is the RZs and RBs they seem quite cheap. I bought mine maybe like 5 years ago. I feel like you can get one now for a similar price, even though these sort of cameras are really booming. So I'm a bit surprised they're not more expensive than they are. Yeah, I guess RZs, RBs, they tend to be quite good value. Well, I think they're amazing value. What's the difference in lens quality between the Contax T2 and the T3? Probably fuck all. I've never shot with either of these cameras. I'm guessing it's probably a very similar lens. You just got a newer body. I would be interested in trying out a T2 or a T3 at some point, but for me, I shoot with the Yashica T5 for that sort of thing. It's way cheaper. It seems pretty similar. I'm quite happy with that. Any tips on shooting film with flash? Not really, because I've never shot with flash. I always use continuous lights, but that's normally just because that's the setup I have. I don't often use a studio. Most of my photos I shoot in my flat or I shoot on the street with natural light. But flash is something I really want to experiment with next, and I'm definitely going to do a video maybe comparing the two perhaps. What's something you can always count on yourself taking a picture of? Probably scooters. I was big inspired by Willem Verbeek and his fantastic scooter image. That really inspired me to shoot more scooters. And also cones. Now here we go. Here's the real question. Should pineapple be allowed to go on pizza? If you'd have asked me this question a couple of years ago, I would have said no, it shouldn't be allowed. But I've matured a little bit since then. I've mellowed, and I would say it's allowed to go on pizza. Yeah, it's allowed to. But should you? Probably not. No. Would I? No. If it's something you like, then good for you. Enjoy your pizza. Favourite Ilford film has to be XP2. Whenever I use it, I get quite flat results. I can kind of then shape the look I want from that. Some of my favourite black and white shots have always come from XP2. How would you advise people to store shot film due to labs being closed at the moment? Store them in your fridge. I have all my film in my fridge. I've had some film in there for years. Apparently you can freeze your film as well, but that sounds like a pretty weird thing to do, so maybe don't do that. All-time fave medium format camera. Got to be the RZ67. Not necessarily the best camera, but it is the camera that I used to get into medium format, and I love it like my child. I don't have any children, but, well, I do have children. I've got 7 cameras. What's your favourite lens for the Pentax 6.7 thus far? Thus far, it would have to be the 90mm, because that's the only one I've used. But I've heard very good things about the 105mm, so I'll probably try that at some point. 90 has been really good for me so far. It's good for being out and about street stuff. I used it in the Japan video, but also I've used it recently on the last video, which was portraits. So it's quite a diverse lens. You can do a mix of things with it. Where was the point you started to grow your photography into REM? I'm assuming you mean Radical Eye magazine as opposed to the band REM. I think we did our first video probably 3 years ago. It was all about that journey. It was all about documenting, trying something for the first time. What's your fave type of light for shooting portraits? Windows, umbrella, softbox? Natural light is always the king. That's where I've got some of my favorite shots from. Unfortunately, living in London, it's not always that bright outside. You're not guaranteed a golden hour or anything like that every day. So yeah, natural light when I can get it, and then softbox if I can't. Any new favorite film stock? The last video had some Portra 800 in. I'd never shot Portra 800 before, I don't think. I was really impressed being able to do what we were able to do without having, you know, loads of light, which was good. So yeah, Portra 800, something I'm going to do a little bit more of. Why are you so awesome? Well, what can I say? Thoughts on the HASSELBLAD V system? Personally, I've never used it, but I'd like to, so maybe sometime in the future. Tips on composition and lighting. I think that's probably a whole other video and something I'm looking to do soon. So keep your eyes peeled. Maybe we'll have something like that in the future. Ever tried shooting REDSCALE? I don't know what that is. So, REDSCALE. REDSCALE is a technique of shooting photographic film where the film is exposed from the wrong side. It's all looking very red. I don't actually know how you would load 35mm like that. I don't know if that's even possible on some cameras. Looks interesting, but I'm not sure that's something I'm going to try. What is your biggest fear? I don't feel like I have many fears. So I guess my biggest fear is forgetting to take the dark slide out. Will you make a video on studio shooting and lighting? Yes, I will. I want to do some experiments with flash. So once we get out of this current situation, I get the opportunity to get into a proper studio with some proper gear, then I think that's something that I'll be doing. Flash or continuous? I received loads of questions about flash or continuous. At the moment, I've only ever used continuous. The reason I've only ever used continuous so far is because I like to be able to see what I'm going to get with the light. Have you ever shot large format? No, I have not. And I'm not sure if I ever will. Personally, large format work that I have seen, I'm not sure if there's anything in that aesthetic that appeals to me more than the medium format look. I might experiment a little bit in the future if I can get my hands on it, but it's obviously very expensive. Always open to experiment, and maybe I'll do that at some point in the future. Also, shout out to Barney Arthur Photo. He's left me some great questions today. Check out his YouTube channel. He just uploaded his first video a couple of weeks ago. Head over there, have a view. I'll leave a link in the description. It's a great video. You should definitely subscribe to him. Enlarging from negative versus printing from a scan. I've never enlarged from a negative, but that is something I'm interested in doing. I'm very interested in that look that you get from printing. It's something I want to experiment with, but I've not had the chance to do it yet. Do you guys reach out to models for photo shoots? Is there another way? or a middle person? It completely depends. Personally, I've always reached out directly to people that I want to photograph. You're not guaranteed that those people are going to respond to you. Sometimes I'll try and email them. It's sort of hit and miss whether people even see the messages sometimes or if they want to respond. I like the more personal route of speaking to them that way rather than going through an agency. The times I have gone through an agency to work with models, the results are always, for me, a little bit less interesting because my experiences have been the model isn't as invested. They're more just there because they have to be there. What's your light setup? I guess this is referring to the last video we did. The light setup is an Aputure 120D and an Aputure Tri-8. Aputure were kind enough to send me the Tri-8 after an older video I did with the 120 they saw. So thank you Aputure for sending me that Tri-8. And if you're watching this video and you want to send me another light, please do. Is pineapple allowed to go on pizza? You've already asked that question and I've given you your answer. Now go and enjoy your pizza. Episode 1 is shooting medium format for the first time. What was your primary format before then? Before we shot that video, I was mainly shooting on digital. I used to have a 6D. I was developing, I was experimenting. Yeah, then I sort of made the switch into medium format. And now I don't really use any digital cameras anymore apart from filming video. What kind of skincare do you use? Wow, great question. Oils, salts, creams, moisturizer. If you want to know more about my skincare routine, leave a comment below and maybe I'll look to be doing that soon. Thank you very much for your question, Sarah. Shout out to Sarah, who was in our very first video, episode 1. Go and check that video out if you haven't seen it. Any darkroom videos in the future, I don't have any experience in the darkroom really, apart from when I was at university. So it's something I would need to relearn how to do, but it is something I'm very interested in. Hopefully that's something I'll get to in the future. Favorite lens for portraits on location? It's probably got to be the 110 on the Mamiya as my favorite lens. But because you said on location, I'd be tempted to say the Pentax 90mm. You get a bit more flexibility in what you can shoot. You can shoot portraits, you can also shoot wider stuff with that, and the Pentax is just way more portable. Any recommendations for affordable and natural looking light? The most affordable natural looking light you can get is natural light. Where possible, I'm always going to use natural light if that's the kind of look I'm going for. I find it hard to kind of like recreate that exact look, but the look natural light gives me when I'm inside is obviously quite directional because it's coming through a window. So I'll often recreate that with continuous light. I don't have many recommendations for actual lights. The only ones I've really used are the Aputure series ones. They're the lights I've used for all of my non-natural light work. Stay-at-home film ideas. I'm taking this time to not actually do that much photography. I haven't really picked up a camera since this whole thing started. I'm saving a bit of money on film. I'm thinking about what I'm going to do next. For me, I enjoy stuff where I go out, I shoot with someone. I can't really do that at the moment, so I'm planning for those next things. I'm planning some video ideas, and I'm planning for the people and types of shoots that I want to do down the line. But if you are stuck inside at the moment and you are looking for something to photograph, I think trying self-portraits is a really interesting idea. Personally, it's not something I want to do that much of because I don't really like having my photograph taken. But I think there's a lot of value in experimenting with that, experimenting with a setup, experimenting with your light. And this will give you plenty of time to play around with that, check the result, improve, change things, and just experiment a little bit more. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for submitting your questions. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you'd like to see more of this sort of thing or talking about specific topics, drop a comment below and I'll take a look for next time. So thanks for watching guys, and we'll see you in the next episode.